So there's an opportunity to give reflections. Like reflection is the ability to listen and observe. So humans, we have this reflective mind, so we can watch ourselves, we can observe. And the teachings of the Buddha are not teachings to grasp, but they help you to reflect, open up your mind, your consciousness to being the observer, rather than somebody always trying to get something or get rid of something. And this, like the thinking mind is about discrimination. So that's what it's for. It's to, you have to think, and this is a tree, this is a microphone, this is a bhikkhu, this is a pokal, and we discriminate and we say this is big and this is small, this is good, this is bad. And so the language and the thinking process is equipped for that function only. It's not, doesn't lead you outside itself. If we attach to our thinking, even if we attach to Buddha's teaching just on a thinking level, it doesn't, its point is to lead you onward, not to bind you to a lot of words and a lot of ideas that you get from scriptures or teachers or whatever. So that it's like awakening. And in England, one time a woman asked me, "How can you describe the teaching of the Buddha in one sentence?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do it in one word." And what's that? And then wake up. So that's it. Like we think we're awake, our eyes are open, and you can hear me. But can you really listen? You can hear my voice, and then you have reactions to what I say, interest or boredom or agreement or disagreement. But to awaken is to not to try to prove I'm right or wrong, but to observe your own reactions to what you're listening to. It's like this. It's not about judging it in terms of right and wrong, because that's the thinking mind again, but it's an intuitive awareness in which we observe our own reactions to the things that impinge on us in this life. So that's why, in the Western world, this is not part of our cultural or religious training. It's that's why there's so much interest in Buddhism worldwide, because it offers a very clear teaching on how to develop this intuitive awareness. Or it's like a universal intelligence. You're tuning into universal intelligence rather than intelligence that you read in books or your own clever mind, but you're operating in this reflective way. And this is the if we want to resolve conflicts, both internally in our own minds or with others, or how do you there's a big subject of conflict resolution. Now nobody quite knows how to do it, because on the thinking level we have different views, different opinions, and we have we don't agree on political systems or economic or religious or social or ideals. We can agree with somebody else, but we're still caught in the words themselves and maybe the inspiration or the reaction we have to those particular words. So, like mindfulness, then this is a word that what does it mean really? In English, the word mindfulness is Usually we use it to apply to pay attention, like when you're crossing the street or driving a car or climbing a cliff or something. You have to be mindful, otherwise, you could end up dying in an accident or killing somebody. So, I remember as a child, my mother, be mindful crossing the street, look to the right, look to the left. And, warning, is mindful of situations or things. But in the sampajanya then is not focused on one thing, but a broad opening in the present. It's not, you're not particularly choosing one object to focus on, like a concentration practice, but opening to the moment, to the present moment, is, what do you call it, apprehension, or like comprehension is understanding, but apprehension is the sense of the consciousness open to the present. And then in that, I call it intuitive awareness, but whatever words, it's just a simple ability we have to pay attention to the present moment, which includes all of us, everything that's happening, the weather, the external sense impressions, the personal feelings, emotional reactions, thoughts and memories that you can observe in the present. They're like this. So they use this in Pali they call it tattada, the isness or suchness or as isness, or Tanjakun Pudatat, is say Benyang Ni Eng, and in Thai means it's like this. And one time somebody asked Buddha about if he were isolated on a desert island, what book, or would he take the Tripitaka with him, or what would he take with him if he had a choice of one thing on a desert island? He said he'd just wear a little tag around his neck saying Benyang Ni Eng. I think that's very good, actually. Yeah, that applies to everything, whether you're alone, or, deserted on a desert island, or starving to death, or dying, or having to fight off hostile natives, or whatever. Benyang Ni Eng. It's a way of holding the present moment without just be caught in panic reactions or moods that you personally have. You can put them in this perspective. And it doesn't mean a kind of indifference or ignorance. It's an openness in which our response is from wisdom rather than just reactivity through fear and desire. Because fear and desire haunt humanity in general. We're caught in this realm of desire and fear. And that's why the Buddha established the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, because he could see this is the main problem we have. Is just we're caught, kind of enmeshed in a sticky web of our own fears and desires, and then the Four Noble Truths is a teaching about how to see through that and release yourself from just sticking more to the web and being bound by it. And so here, in a tradition like this, you have, this is an ancient tradition, the Theravada monastic sangha. I mean, we assume I would take our, like a direct roots to the Buddha himself. And so like the Vinaya we have is from that time, it's an ancient, is establishing rules of behavior, etiquette, and ways of resolving conflicts for the Sangha, and for personal and for social. It establishes our relationship to society, to each other, and of course, living abroad for so many years, many people think that the Vinaya is old-fashioned and moribund and doesn't apply to the present time. Because like in the West, we think anything that if it's not modern and up to date, you're always trying to improve on the old things, make them better, and we have this conceit. I've seen it in Britain and in America, where people interested in Buddhism are going to improve Buddhism, making it up to date, democratic, and fitting the ideals of modern, modern attitudes that are common now in Western countries, affluent countries. But this is a kind of conceit, that we think, that our belief in progress is our reality. We're progressing. It's not in those times in India, 2,500 years ago. That was appropriate for people in India, but it doesn't, it's not appropriate for modern educated people in England. And what is this? This is a view and opinion that people can believe in, and most every Western actually agrees with this. Most of them, because that's how we're conditioned to think and about ourselves. Like being American, you're conditioned to think we're progressing, we're making everything better for everybody. Like invading Iraq, we're going to free the Iraqis from Saddam Hussein and give them American democracy as a kind of gift. Here, you can have this. And they didn't want it. And we killed half the population in the process. But I mean, it's like it's a kind of conceit that we have. And so here in Thailand, many of you come living in Thai monasteries, and it's easy to think, well, these are just traditional Thai customs, old-fashioned, and give it the Western criticism. But is it really that way? Like a tradition, if we just rearrange it according to modern values, the tradition's lost. The tradition sustains itself. It's managed to survive 2,500 years without any great changes, at least in the Theravada school. So that says a lot for a tradition, and it's not based on cultural values like, we are worshiping Hindu gods or things like that, but even though in the scriptures we talk about Brahma and Indra, and they're not really the message of the Buddha. That's part of the cultural milieu of his time, but it's the Four Noble Truths. It isn't about God or Brahma or Indra or denial of those, and it's not about denying God or criticizing belief in those deities, but it's about suffering, its causes, the end of suffering and the way out of suffering. So that means it's appropriate, to all of us. It transcends the cultural conditioning we have and the modern times and the opinions we've formed, through our own education and cultural attachments. So this is encouragement just to recognize, it took me a long time to really appreciate a tradition, because I loved the Dhamma, I loved, thought Dhamma's really great, but Vinaya just, seems to be so complicated and fussy and nitpicking about things, and that I couldn't care less about. And so there was a sense of just putting up with it because that's what was expected. Well, that's one reaction. But reflecting on that reaction, that attitude towards Vinaya, I began to see as dukkha, because it was coming from conceit. It wasn't a truth, it was coming from my view, my own criticism and attitudes about tradition and rules and things like moral precepts and whatnot that are not based on reality but are conditioned into the mind through my own life experience. So you can't trust that. You can't trust your own thoughts and your own beliefs or opinions and views. So the point, is to, recognize that the Vinaya is here as a help. It's to help us be mindful, not recondition us into, some kind of very strict meditator, not to reinforce the stakya ditthi or the ego. It's a way of living in which, if we use it properly with mindfulness and wisdom, then it helps us to see through our own ditthis, our own views and opinions, our own reactions to things, to restraint or to, living in Thailand, different culture, different attitudes, different ways of doing things. So, with the traditional form, it's not, you're never asked to do anything bad. Sometimes you're asked to do things you don't want to do, or you don't see the point of. But I found that very helpful to me when asked to do things I don't want to do. Or, there's nothing, I've never been asked to do anything bad. But maybe I just don't want to do something that Luang Por Chah wants me to do. So, but I learned through just this reflecting on my own, I don't want to do that, I don't see that. I saw the suffering of that kind of thinking, holding to that view. So you actually can witness suffering, because then you reflect, he's not asking me to do anything bad or wrong, and he's probably doing it for a purpose. I can rationalize it, and then I can still think I should be able to just do it and not create a problem. And so I can think both in terms of I don't want to be bothered, or he's wrong, or I'm wrong, I shouldn't feel like this. But the reflective awareness of wisdom is observing that, listening to it, to your own discontent or view that you might believe in, or that you're grasping. And through that, then eventually you just learn, so you're making your life easy. You're just doing it this way, and it's a way that we can live together, without creating endless conflicts and negotiating our own position within a structure. The structure is fixed. It's immutable. We just fit into our position in the structure, and work from there. And then as time goes by, you go to different levels of seniority and so forth, and we'd adapt to those kind of situations. But it's not for trying to become senior, or or feeling that being junior is somehow being inferior to seniority. Those are kind of spurious ways of thinking about structure. It's merely conventional. It's impersonal. It's not about who's the best monk or who's the most attained. It's merely a convenient structure based on seniority of who ordained first. So that helps us. It's a great benefit when you really tune into it, because so much of life, you're brought up in a society like an egalitarian ideal of, like the United States, the ideals of equality and freedom and self-expression, self-assertion, and so our cultural habits form from these kind of perceptions. But you never feel where you belong. It's a competitive society. It's always about who can run the fastest, who's a winner, who's a loser. So, even though we're all equal, some are winners and some are losers. And where can a winner and a loser be equal? And then if you see yourself as a loser, then you feel you're not any good. You're not like, you've failed because you're not the winner. And the self is made on these perceptions. It's created out of who can who's the best, who's the best mind, who's the best runner, the football champion, the film star, or the jazz musician, or whatever. It's about being celebrity, being famous, who has the most money. And this is worldly Dhamma. It's about who winning is the best and losing is the worst. And in order to keep that illusion of a winner, you have to keep winning all the time. So it can be very stressful, because if you start losing, then, you've been so attached to winning that you can go into depression and commit suicide because you lost something. So this is about the conditioned realm, the emotions. We're emotional creatures. We feel life. We react to things. It's this realm. Just look at it right now. You're in a sensitive body that feels all the time. From when you're born, you start feeling. They cut the umbilical cord. You have to feel separation from your mother, and then you're just open. A baby. Helpless, dependent on the care of somebody else because you can't look after yourself. So that, and then you feel, baby feels heat and cold, hunger, thirst, pain, and all these natural conditions, these natural feelings, because this realm that we're experiencing is about feeling, continuous sense impingement and conditions that we have very little control over to make what we want. But we're very adaptable. You go find people living in the Svalbard and Antarctica and Thailand, all over the world. We're quite adaptable to the changing conditions, but we don't understand them. We don't reflect on how conditions operate, and we tend to imagine we can create an ideal place to live where it's eternal spring and the temperature's always right and there's always a supply of really delicious food and everybody's young and beautiful, and that's a kind of heavenly utopia. We can create that image and long for that. But that's not the way life is. That's not like this, the way it is. It's it's a dream. It's an ideal. So it's in this reflective intelligence, you're putting things in their proper perspective. So you're not deluded and attaching to fantasies and ideals, and then always feeling bitter or disappointed or lost in the reality of this sense realm that we have to live in till we die. So, and also, monastic life, it can be, training and it can be onerous if we make it so, like how we react to discipline or structure. Vinaya, we can make it a form of suffering and just put up with it, grin and bear it attitude. But also recognize how to use the Vinaya for mindfulness, because we have to submit ourselves to a structure that we didn't create and we're not supposed to change, We just learn to do it this way. And somebody, trained in, acculturated in a be free to do what you want attitude, feels oppressed by the restrictions and the limitations of the Vinaya. And I did that for a long time. I remember early years at Wat Pah Pong, I felt I was being suffocated, with all these rules. And I was the first Western monk there, so everybody was on my back, I couldn't walk right, and everything I did was too much or not right. And I'm from the background where, you don't take that from people. I'm shut up and I can do it the way I want kind of attitude. But in the training, because I had a lot of faith with Luang Por Chah, I just watched my own resistance to the structure, aversion, and my impatience with it, and my dittis, my own views about it, and criticisms. And through that, then you can release, you're letting go of that tendency to believe your own mind and cling to views you might form around Thai Buddhism or Vinaya or different teachers or whatever. So what it does, somebody asked last evening about, you get instructions on practice, so you have to get first jhana before you can do vipassana, you have to develop this before you can do that. And so, I've been through that in the early years. When I was a layman in Bangkok, before ordaining, expatriate Buddhists in Bangkok at the time were so opinionated. Everybody had their own view. You go to somebody and say, only Buddha taught. That's a real Zen teacher. He's the enlightened master. And then you go to Wat Bawar and they say, no, Ajahn Mahaprabhu was the only enlightened master. And you've got to, and then you're hearing all this, and I went to study Abhidhamma with Ajahn Sujin, and it's you have to know the Abhidhamma, and then I just became totally confused because I didn't know, and everybody spoke from this kind of peremptory style. This is the only way. Before this is right, and anybody says different is wrong. Then different methods. The Yup Nor Pong Nor Mahasi Sayadaw method. Some people said this is the way to do it, and others said no, don't do it that way. And then some of the methods, and there was some arahant style of meditating, and it goes on and on. So in the Buddhist world, even in Thailand, you're presented with a lot of various opinions and views about practice, about Dhamma, about Vinaya. Now, with mindfulness, then we can observe how those opinions affect us. This you can know, whether you have to get first jhana before you can do vipassana. You may not know that, you just listen to what somebody tells you, but you can observe your reaction to it. So what does that do when somebody says, you're meditating all wrong, you have to get first jhana first? And what happens? You can observe, you're feeling a confusion or belief is like this. At least you can know this for sure, that what you're feeling at this moment is like this. This is because that you can know for sure because you're observing. Whether you have to get first jhana before you do anything else is, you don't know. You're not sure. And that unsurety is also present. You can be aware of not knowing, of being uncertain. Or because somebody that very high up in the Sangha, Kuba Ajahn and so forth, says this, then it has to be right. You can observe your own way of holding teachings from others as is like this, whether you believe, agree, or doubt, or confuse. Then you observe those kind of emotional reactions. So it's not about trying to prove any way is right or wrong, but at least what I'm pointing out right now is what you can know for sure in the present moment and it's not knowing about, it's recognizing it. This is the mood or the emotional state, or what I'm recognizing right now when I'm listening to Ajahn Sumedho is like this. And maybe you have no name for that. with emotions, they fluctuate, they change, they have levels of intensity and laxity and that, so we don't have words to describe all the different the emotional changes we're feeling. So it's not about trying to define or name anything, but recognize. That's enough. That's all you have to know. It's like this. And that which is aware of that is you're building that. That's what you can trust, the awareness, not what you're feeling or you're reacting to, but what the ability to observe conditioned phenomena. And that's with the Puto style, this emphasis that Thai forest tradition uses is the mantra Puto. And when I first started meditating, I was such a intense thinker, rabidly kind of think, and I was taught, I first started at Wat Mahatat with Tanjakun Chodok, who's famous then. He just established a Thai monastery in London at the time, so and he taught this Yupno rising, falling of the abdomen, and I found that very helpful as a beginning, but then I found that I tended to grasp the instructions, and then oftentimes they say this is a really good meditator. And when I ordained as a summoner, I went to Wat Nun Pana in Nong Khai, spent the Pansa, and there was one other monk, Thai monk, who lived across from my kuti, who they said, this is really good. He does this Yupno Pongno practice. Every movement is, so perfectly, everything moves slowly, and you just watch him eat his meal, and so I tried to do that, I found the American side wanted to compete, wanted to be better than him, I wasn't aware of it, but it's like, you don't know what you're doing, you're kind of getting these ideas or these instructions, and then we tend to follow them with our own particular view about it, or we want the praise, we want to be, we want to become enlightened or whatever. So, but we're not aware of what's motivating us. We can understand the words and even the instructions, but it's beyond that. It's when learning to trust this awareness that you really can see through and clearly wake up to reality, to the reality of Dhamma. So, like here at Wat Pananacha, encourage you to observe how you react to it. You don't have to like it or agree with everything, but you can observe. And how you personally react, how you relate to others, or senior monks, or Thai tradition, or whatever. It's not a matter of just grin and bear it or just conforming blindly, but observing. And this is how to use Dhammavinya in a way that it leads onward. It's Upanayaka Dhamma. It takes you to reality. It's not about if you do this you get this result. It's not a guarantee, but it is a structure to use. And that's what I've learned, how to use the structure for mindfulness, rather than becoming, trying to become an arahant or a stream ant or something like that. Because culturally conditioned to want to become an arahant. So that's how, my personality works. It wants to get something, wants the best, want to be a winner, Arahant's a winner, I want to become a winner. Now that's self-view, isn't it? That's created through cultural and personal conditioning. And then how many of you feel guilty or bad when you can't practice like you feel you should? Maybe you hold practice up as some ideal and then you can't live up to that ideal, and then you can feel, I can't practice, I'm no good. And the emphasis is not about becoming someone who can practice, but observing your own ditthis about practice, your own views, your way you hold the views of practice, and your own abilities or disabilities in regard to it is like this, the way it is. Because this panya level isn't discriminating. It's not saying one thing is better than it's discerning. And so when you discern, it means you're intuitively awake to reality. Discernment is like you're discerning right now, just visually, form and space. Because there's space, and then there's forms in the space. This is discern. I'm not saying space is better than form, or form is better than space. Not a matter of which is the best. It's like this. To observe space with the eyes, you just have to open your eyes and withdraw your interest and attention to the forms, and this is all around us. All the time, wherever you are, there's space. Space, where does it end? It has no end, but without space, the forms couldn't exist. You see, so, if this was just solid cement building, it'd be useless, because we couldn't get in, but because there's a lot of space, we can. And then, but we might be, life is more interested in the picture, the clock, the people, the furniture, the color of the walls, and so forth. And we may never consciously notice space, which is most important for existence, and all around us all the time, but we may not ever consciously notice it. So in reflective awareness, you're noticing what's obvious, not trying to create something that's not present, but awakening to the reality of space and form. And so then you have perspective. You have, it's not about this space is better than the space over there. But the things in the space the forms in this space might be better than the forms over in that space. You get into the discriminating mind, which is that those people in that place are better than the people in this place, and that's back to discriminating, views and opinions. But we're not, that's not the point anymore. We're full of views and opinions anyway. We've given our lives to acquire more things to attach to, more conditions to believe in, and developing very critical minds. So we're not stupid, we're not just naive about everything. We are, no, this is better than that, and this is right, and this is wrong. But but that's not liberating. It may make you, wise in a worldly sense. You develop worldly wisdom, how to survive, how to live in society with worldly wisdom. But the wisdom that comes through Dhamma isn't about the world, it's about reality. And so it puts the world in a context. We can see the world. We can observe the world. And one famous Thai monk who passed away long, Luang Pu Dun, who's one of Ajahn Mun's disciples. He was in Surin, and some of his teachings, he was very succinct, very to the point. He didn't expound a lot and go on, but he had ways of just pointing to the here and now. So some of his teachings are very, very powerful. And so it's like that. Think and the world arises. Stop thinking and the world ceases. Something like that. That's interesting. That's to contemplate. If I attach to a thought, that's a world I've created. I'm creating a world. A world isn't like the world that we tend to think of. Like the planet Earth, and that. It's about conditioned phenomena. So we create the world we live in through thinking. And if we get attached to those kind of thoughts, then we create the world that we experience. If we stop thinking, the world ceases, because in the empty consciousness there's non-attachment to conditions. And this is discerning, being able to discern attachment and non-attachment. It's not about discriminating, it's not about non-attachment's better. It's not about discrimination. It's about discerning the difference. Like, is space better than form? It's not. That's ridiculous, isn't it, when you think about it? But so it's not. It's discerning with eye consciousness. This is the way it is. So right now, just accepting this moment. The space, the conditions, external that I see, I can observe, my own mental state, emotional states like this. Like yesterday, when my precious items were stolen from my kuti, everything's gone. My passports, I have 2 passports, I have dual citizenship, they're gone, everything's gone. I can't even prove I'm alive, my suti is gone. The things that were, forms and conditions that I protected and didn't want stolen were taken. And then, but you can even use that, it's like this, the feeling of being robbed is like this. So you're not just caught in emotional anger or resentment, but you can actually use a situation, it's recognizing that, like losing your passport, when you depend on your presence here in Thailand because your passport gets stamped, and they're trying to get me permanent residency and everything's in that passport and it's gone. I could spend the day worrying about it, or use the moment to just be awake and aware. So then the response to such a situation is appropriate. You inform the police and you make arrangements to get a new passport and so forth. But it's not just reactive panic from some unpleasant experience. So this awareness gives us that kind of ability to respond, not just react to life itself. Otherwise, we're merely helpless victims of reactions. We're conditioned to react to experience, and we're happy or sad, or what we like, what we don't like. But with this intuitive awareness then puts us in relationship to liking, disliking. It's discerning. It's not discriminating. Attachment, non-attachment. You really have to accept, study attachment first. So hold on to things, but mindfully, and then let go of them. And so it's like, you discern the difference. And then attachment through ignorance, not through awakening. So when when the avijja, the ignorance isn't there, then attachment to things is merely functional. It's what you do. You have to contact the embassies and so forth. That's not from kilesa. It's just a functional use of this society and doing what you have to do to get by, survive in this country. So I think I'll stop here, and I wanted to express my gratitude, appreciation for everybody's treated me very well, and may you all realize and recognize Nibbana.
Yang